A quick thank you to all of my patrons, and a special shout out to Lemu and Firebringer Axel for donating $5 a month. Your support is heavily appreciated. That new Kanon read was so nice. Really reminds me that Maeda and Key really were doing powerful stories from the get-go. God, I just love being a Key fan. Well, at this point there's not much more to read for Key's library. Rewrites left, but that's getting a localization soon. And I also want to wait for Angel Beats to get here legally so I don't have to make another Summer Pockets happen. So I guess I might as well just wait. Oh wait, yeah. I still haven't read Moon. Might as well go all the way. I heard it's quite different, and the premise certainly seems that way, but it looks interesting, so might as well dive in. Whoa, what the hell?
Hey, Moon! Where the hell are you? Show yourself! What was that? What kind of bullshit was that? Why did you do that to me? Do you think I could just take it? Do you think I could just endure such agony? Why was this created? Was it fun? Was it satisfying to you? Answer me, you fucking Moon! Answer me! Ah!
So Key, a visual novel company loved by many, known for their stories such as Clanad, Little Busters, Kanon, Air, and more. Their visual novels are known for their emotion and heart that deliver strong messages to the people who read them, which can even be considered life-changing. However, did you know? Key technically existed and were making visual novels before the actual company was made. Indeed, as all of the members who would become Key were originally part of a company called Tactics, where the people who would become Key already made 2 visual novels, those being Moon and One to the Radiant Season. In this video, we'll be talking about the former. Moon is the very first visual novel that was headed by who's considered to be Key's mastermind, Jun Maeda, who writes a majority of Key's well-known emotional heartwarming stories. So, Moon must be the first work that started it all, right? The one that Maeda showed to the world his heartwarming, wholesome stories of people and the beauty of family and life. Oh boy, if only. See, while Maeda might be known for writing slice of life and emotional stories, Moon is quite the outlier to that trend, with very big differences. What kind of differences? Oh, you'll see. Brace yourselves, cause today, I'm reviewing Moon. Moon tells the story of Ikumi Amasawa, a beautiful girl who was heavily affected by the death of her mother when she was younger. She discovers that her mother was part of a mysterious organization called Fargo before she died, and so Ikumi joins the organization in order to learn why her mother was killed, as well as to take revenge on whatever or whoever could be held culprit. She is put into a group of girls where she meets Haruka Mima and Yui Nakura, 2 other girls who also joined the Fargo organization undercover for their own purposes. Due to their aligned goals, the 3 strike an alliance before entering the Fargo facility, where they're each separated into 3 groups, and thus different buildings. Ikumi is assigned to the A group, where she meets Yoko Kanuma, the only other person in the A group, as well as a mysterious boy who she ends up becoming roommates with. It's shown that the girls in Fargo undergo daily mental training, and not only that, but the B and C groups that Yui and Haruka were assigned to respectively also have to go into an extra kind of training called mental strengthening. And well, we'll get to that. For now, you should be able to see that Moon isn't your typical Key setting. It's not a slice of life with underlying mystery, but rather a horror mystery, including elements of what people like to call mindfuck, and some really uncomfortable storytelling. I'll be straight up. If you're a weak-minded person, you shouldn't read this. Moon is one of the most uncomfortable stories I've ever consumed, not just because of content, but because everything the story does aims to give you discomfort. The Fargo facility is bleak and bland, with no windows and drab colors to give you a sense of dread and constant claustrophobia. The OST itself, which I'll also touch on later, just makes everything unpleasant and not fun at all. And of course, the worst of all is what actually happens during the story, and well, that's where we talk about the non-advertiser friendly parts of Moon. If you didn't know, Kii's visual novels actually started off as eroges, cause you know, visual novels need H-teens to survive, and until Clanad, Kii was no exception. As tactics, they obviously did the same, and well, Moon is definitely more eroge than Nakige, let's just say that, and remember the mental strength thing I talked about earlier? Do you see where I'm going with this? A trio of cute girls go into a mysterious cult to get unspecified mental training. That's right, Moon's plot is that of a fucked up hentai. You know shit like Euphoria? Yeah, just like that! In Moon, the B and C groups have to go through constant rape in order to build some sort of mental strength up for the other trainings, and let me tell ya, it's not nice to read. It's uncomfortable fetish shit that includes such wonderful things as golden shower, mind break, trauma, and more that I do not want to remember for my own sake. Yes, I love it! This is exactly what I expect from the person who wrote Little Busters. Now, you might be thinking, so there's rape for the B and C groups. At least our main character doesn't have that since she's an A, right? See, that's where the other training comes in. Every day, the main character has to go into training in rooms called the Min-Mess and L-Pod. And well, there's basically the real training that you go through in the facility, and the rape that goes through in the other groups is essentially preparation for those. Training in the Min-Mess and L-Pod basically has Ikumi look back onto her own memories and confront her past. The Min-Mess looks back on sad or painful memories that she's gone through, usually memories relating to that of her mother, which is fine. But the L-Pod instead has Ikumi confronting much more shameful scenes of her past in way more messed up memories that reveal the fact that Ikumi may not be the most normal high school girl. Like, literally, the first one, the entry-level one, is scat. Scat! Basically, the story is the plot of a really fucked up hentai. Like, people joke about Tsukihime having rape bits, but let me tell ya, it's nothing compared to Moon. Oh, if only it stopped at rape. It goes hard into disgusting fetish shit that I just don't want to talk about or remember. The things that happen are just supremely fucked up, combined with the uncomfortable atmosphere, and well, it's not going to be a ride most Kii fans I know will enjoy. So now, you might be thinking, well, okay, Manpig, so this isn't your average Kii work. Jolly good, I won't read it then. And I'm gonna hold you right there. Now sure, this is definitely not a visual novel most Kii fans will enjoy if they're expecting pure Kii tales, but there may be merit in this story. Now, you may ask how, especially considering what exactly I described earlier. We'll touch on that later, I promise. In terms of story though, Moon's world is actually low-key interesting due to the actual mystery and the backstory of the Fargo. That stuff did keep me reading. Also, an element of bizarre, unnerving storytelling is there, which rears its head in the ending of the story, where it basically just goes full-on lame tier mindy game, where you question what exactly is happening, and honestly, I love that shit. However, it's not perfect. Due to the bizarre nature of the story, the ending, while satisfying, doesn't give a lot of solid explanations or even a proper face to what the whole deal was. So don't expect answers for absolutely everything. All in all, Moon's story is an experience that many people will not be able to enjoy or even endure. And I definitely can't say with certainty that it'll be worth enduring the experience for the ending or whatever messages that the story will have. It's not for everyone. However, while saying that, I find it difficult to call it bad either, since there is merit. And for those who want to be uncomfortable, since this is a psychological horror visual novel, heck, this story does the job really well. Ultimately, I'll give this story a 6 out of 10, cause for me, the good parts did outweigh the suffering overall. But please, do remember, it is actual suffering! So this is once again where I talk about where Moon finds its worth. If there's one thing Moon has in common to other key works, is that it's very reliant on its characters, and thus your enjoyment depends on how much you appreciate or enjoy them as well. I will say that like the story, these characters aren't exactly your typical key heroines, and just because you like key characters doesn't mean you'll necessarily like the Moon girls too. But I ultimately think that the characters do make the suffering of Moon worth it. And in a way, it's because of how messed up the story is that they work as well as they do. Each major Moon character is normal on the surface, but a large majority of them are hiding difficult pasts. Ikumi losing her mother is just one of many things, and the training that goes on in the Minmess and L-Pod basically force these characters to confront their pasts, and we're shown how each character confronts their trauma and uses them to become stronger. That is, if you make the right choices. Our main character Ikumi is one of the most interesting uses of a visual novel protagonist in my opinion. Usually with key visual novels, you play the role of a protagonist and you interact with the heroines in order to help their problem. But with Ikumi, she is the heroine, and the only one out there to help her is herself. You, as the player, hold the power to make the choices in her story that will dictate what she becomes. Will she break down because of her past? Will she become something else due to the events of the story? Or will you know what you must do in order to overcome yourself and save everyone? You, as the player, dictate Ikumi's possibilities, and I loved that. For the two other girls, Yui and Haruka both joined the facility to find siblings, and despite having the same overall goal, their pasts and relationships with their siblings are very different. It's here where the theme of familial bonds finally shows itself. If you've read a key work or two, you know from experience that family is a heavily recurring theme within almost all of Key's stories, and is a driving force to what makes their stories so powerful. Moon is no different. From Ikumi's relationship with her mother, to Yui and her sister, and to Haruka and her brother, the theme of family is present, and it's here where in spite of all the rape, trauma, mindfuck and suffering, you can see definite traces of what would later make future Key visual novels so special. I also want to bring special mention to Yui because to me, Yui's story was extremely inspiring and definitely even somewhat emotional in a way. I won't spoil it, but I will say, reading Yui's story was when I found Moon worth it, because she was just so strong and so respectable. There's also Yoko, who's a minor side character, who is worth mentioning. She's cool for the scenes that she has, as well as her contribution to the ending. She had a surprising amount of development for what was essentially a side character with about only 5 scenes or so. Finally, we have the mysterious boy that Ikumi is a roommate with, and he's part of what makes Moon a real mystery in my opinion. The boy is obviously a suspicious individual, but at the same time, despite being a part of Fargo, he's quite friendly, and he openly supports your suspicious actions despite his allegiance. You might think that he's just being manipulative, but is it really? The whole debate whether the boy is on your side or not is what makes his character fantastic in my opinion. Despite the hell, I would say the characters did pull through. They aren't the best I've seen, and none of them will reach my top tier standard of key heroines, which, mind you, is obscenely high because I love my key heroines. But they're close, and that says a lot. So overall, I'll give this category an 8 out of 10. Oh man, this is gonna be so fun to talk about. So, Moon was made in 1997. So you can't expect much, and yeah, it kinda shows that. How do I put it kindly? The GUI is fucking atrocious. It's all in cursive and uses this ugly stone texture that makes it hard to read. It's just not visually appealing, and it just shows that less can be more at times. which thankfully they learn quickly and fix in future visual novels. In terms of art, it's done by Hinoe Itaru, who was Key's main artist until she left the company in 2016. If you're in any way familiar with Key, you'd know that Key has this very distinctive moe art style that, from what I've seen, a lot of people dislike. Personally, I'm neutral to it, and I've also warmed up to it over time. But yeah, the character designs, while very expressive, aren't going to be for everyone. Although, by far the worst part about Moon in my opinion is the navigation feature. Now the thing is, every day, you have to navigate the facility by making choices to move your character, similar to a board game. It's a neat feature at first until you realize that clicking the same thing again and again gets really tedious really quickly, and when you have to constantly be going to different places, this is what makes replaying the game a complete ass pain, cause you can't skip this. Yes, if you want to get different endings or CGs, you will have to go through this compulsory clicking navigation constantly, and it's not very fun. The worst part is, Moon is a game where there's one true end and multiple normal ends, as well as plenty of bad ends. And unfortunately, it's impossible to get all of the CGs in one run, since some CGs are end exclusives. So you will want to replay this game if you are a completionist. Even worse, the true end is surprisingly hard to obtain. You need to do specific things in specific ways in order to obtain it, so getting it may require a guide. I know I did, and suffering was dealt subsequently. The other annoying thing is the skip function that there is for text bits, which will also skip the parts which you haven't read, meaning if you want to reread stuff, you need to carefully watch what you read. Basically, getting alternate ends or going back to get scenarios you've missed, it just isn't worth it. It's way more work than it needs to be for these two reasons, and it's just annoying. There is good in the technical quality though. For one, the visual novel actually has two animated scenes, that being the opening and the scene that happens when you start the story, which is really surprising for a visual novel, especially for the time. Also, the sound is quite good. There's voice acting for all characters, including Ikumi. She doesn't have voiced monologue, but her dialogue is voiced, which is, for the time, extremely uncommon. Although, you could also argue the sound effects are negative because, yeah, the H scenes have them, and they're kind of horrible to listen to. I don't want to remember them, let's move on. The OST is fine. There are only 15 tracks, and personally it's not my taste in music, but that's again because Moon is a horror, rather than the actual quality of the tracks. I think the OST works quite well, since a lot of them are tense, unnerving, and in some cases, just pure scary on their own. Doppel Ikumi's theme is a great example of that. It's imposing, mysterious, and just makes me feel extremely uncomfortable. It's good, although personally due to my taste, I do prefer the more silent and emotional OSTs, like Memories, and personally, this was my favorite OST from Moon. Even with that being said, the technical quality of Moon is heavily flawed. The problems with the navigation and skip function are just too annoying to ignore, and in a game where getting the true end is as hard as it is, makes me give Moon a 2 out of 10 for the technical category. Almost everything has aged, from the GUI, the art, and even the skip function. While a good OST and cool animated segments save it from being downright horrible, rereading was just way too much of an inconvenience. I've had time to process my experience with Moon. If you couldn't tell from my reaction in the storytelling, reading Moon wasn't the most pleasant experience for me. In fact, I nearly puked when reading one of the H scenes. That wasn't nice. I spent a lot of time trying to process the fact that one of my favorite creators started his visual novel career with this. It's just a bit shocking. However, ultimately, after I finished and had more time to think about it, I think Moon's not an irredeemable mess that you should absolutely skip or anything. Now, I'll be straight, this isn't a visual novel I'd recommend to many people, even Key fans who are curious. In fact, I'd refrain from recommending Moon to a lot of people just because of the content it has, and how uncomfortable it ultimately gets. You need the right kind of mindset with media, as well as pre-existing expectations for how fucked this shit gets if you want to read Moon. Cause this is not a story any normal person would just casually consume, unless you get off to some real kinky shit. I was initially drawn to Moon with how it was a Maeda visual novel, yet was unexpectedly of a different genre. And while it is that, I was honestly surprised at just how much further it actually was in that department. I've seen my fair share of fucked up stories, mind you. I have gone through worse. But the fact that Maeda made this awes me. However, I don't regret reading it. In fact, in the end, I'd say I like it. Ultimately, when I think about Moon, it's not just the horrible scarring memories of the H scenes and the uncomfortable atmosphere that sticks to me, cause equally as much, I remember the engaging mystery and the interesting backstory of the Fargo organization. I remember the characters who suffer yet grow, characters who, in the end, I can say that I love. For every bit Moon made me want to hurl, it also intrigued me. It made me feel for these characters, and it did leave me with a good message in the end. This is ultimately undoubtedly a story that has the spark of Ki. Its content is not the same, but deep down, you can notice the themes and ideas that would later be remastered and redeveloped into Ki's bright future. You can see how stories like Kanon, Little Busters, and even the very beloved Clannad all have roots that stem from the themes that Moon started, which is kind of amazing considering, again, the kind of story that Moon is. I would only consider reading this story if you are not put off by the disturbing content. More than anything, you must be aware of what kind of content Moon has before you read it. If you like horrors and stuff that make you feel active discomfort or stories that tell themselves in weird ways, you may find something to like. If you're interested in how characters grow off heavy traumas to become better people, that could be another reason you'd want to read this. However, if you don't like some genuinely nasty shit in your fiction, stay the fuck away! And likewise, don't expect your average Maeda story coming into this. This won't be that. Also, if you consider yourself to have a weaker heart and can't take actively discomforting fiction, again, avoid. Also, finally, if you don't want to deal with the tedious constant clicking you'll have to do to navigate the map, it probably won't be a fun read for you. In terms of final recommendation, I must remind that my final verdicts aren't judged on the actual quality of the works, nor how much I love them, but rather how easily I'd recommend it to someone. And in that case, I'd have to say that Moon is iffy. There are so many things you must consider before reading this, despite all the merits that this story does have. What exactly do you expect from the story? How well can you endure these H scenes and atmosphere, and if all of it is even worth it to begin with? Which, despite the fact I considered it to be, I also know for sure that many won't agree with that, which is completely understandable. This is a story I can only recommend to those specific people both able and willing to endure genuinely uncomfortable things to reap the merits that Moon will give. Nobody else. If you are not one of these people, thank God, you're probably a sane person and you don't need to bother. If you're still interested, just be aware of what there is to offer before you go ahead. I made this review because Moon left an evident impression on me, for both good and bad reasons. I couldn't stop thinking about it, so I just had to let my complete thoughts out somewhere. Another reason is because there is surprisingly little figures talking about Moon itself, and I wanted to make this video as a warning to those interested. I really want people to know what to expect before diving into something like Moon, because this is not a story everyone will be able to take. If this informs even one person about Moon's story, and helps them decide whether or not it's worth reading, I would consider this video well worth making. Anyways, that's all for this review on Moon. I hope it was informative, and more so, I hope you enjoyed. P.S. If you're a Ki fan that decided Moon isn't a story you want to touch, but are still curious on the stats of visual novels before they formed Ki, then you might want to check out the other visual novel they made as Tactics, as it probably will be a lot more your speed. Regardless, I hope you'll check back again for the next video I'll make. And maybe until then, I'll see you else somewhere on the internet. See ya!